So good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of the URI Foundation and Alumni Engagement and the Women's Leadership Council, I'd like to welcome you to today's program. My name is Sarah Bordelot, and I'm an Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement. The Women in Leadership Speaker Series showcases the inspiring careers of highly successful and influential women and provides the opportunity to share their knowledge and experiences with students and alumni. The Council just had a very successful month of virtual programs for Women's History Month, and we're happy to have you here today to end the month with us. I do want to note that this program is being recorded. Before we get started, I'd like to extend a special thank you to the Vice President of Alumni Engagement, Michelle Nada. Many thanks for your support of this program and for joining us today. I'd also like to take a moment to highlight the Women's Leadership Council. Led by a group of volunteer alumni, the URI Women's Leadership Council supports and enhances the personal and professional growth of URI women by cultivating meaningful opportunities to unite, celebrate, empower, and learn from each other while forming lasting connections and relationships in the community and beyond. Additionally, the Women's Leadership Council supports and promotes the Women Transforming Women Endowed Scholarship, a scholarship that is awarded each year to a woman-identified student who holds a leadership position and maintains a GPA of at least 3.0. Within a few days of this program, we will send out the webinar recording as well as a link to give to this important scholarship. Our program today will primarily be question and answer style between our featured speaker, Dr. Karina Edmonds, and our host, Michelle Saunders. While you are listening to the program, feel free to write your questions into the Q&A feature, and we'll spend some time at the end to have those questions answered. And please note that we may not be able to get to all questions today. Now, I am excited to introduce our host, Michelle Saunders, a member of the Women's Leadership Council, who received her Master of Arts in Education from URI in 2010. Michelle brings over 15 years of experience in the organizational development industry and currently serves as the Vice President of Talent Management at Harbor One Bank. Michelle is very active in the community, working with organizations such as Year Up, Youth Pride, and foster care initiatives. Michelle is also a mom of two, with one in college and one a junior in high school. Michelle, thanks so much for joining us today for this program.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm happy to be here with you and Karina today. I had the chance to connect with Karina prior to the program, and our audience is going to really enjoy her story on how she became a leader in the tech industry and the leadership skills she developed throughout the journey. I was inspired earlier this week just listening. I'm so excited to introduce her. Dr. Karina Edmonds is a globally recognized visionary leader in the field of innovation, technology transfer, and commercialization. She currently serves as the VP and Global Lead for Academies and University Alliances at SAP, which is a mouthful. It's a multinational software corporation with offices worldwide. Prior to joining SAP, Karina was the Global Lead for AI at Google, working to facilitate research collaborations in AI between Google Cloud and top academic researchers. Karina came to Google from the California Institute of Technology, where she served as the Executive Director for Corporate Partnerships. In 2010, under Barack Obama's administration, she was appointed the first Technology Transfer Coordinator at the U.S. Department of Energy and served as a member of the White House Speaker Bureau to promote STEM careers to women and girls. I'm honored to be in her presence. Karina earned a master's degree and a Ph.D. in Aeronautics from the California Institute of Technology and her bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from University of Rhode Island, go Rams. In 2020, Karina was confirmed by the Rhode Island State Senate to the inaugural Board of Trustees for URI, and she was inducted into URI's Engineering Hall of Fame in 2011 and named a Distinguished Alumna in 2012. With over 20 years in innovation, technology transfer, and commercialization, she's received numerous national recognitions and awards, and she's also a registered U.S. patent agent. She resides in Southern California with her 3 daughters, which I've seen a picture, they all look just like her, all of which also have a strong interest in STEM. So Karina, it's wonderful to be here with you today. Welcome. I look forward to Q&A with you shortly. But first, will you please share a bit of your story with the audience so that we can get to know you a bit?
Sure. First, thank you, Michelle, and thank you for the URI Women's Leadership Series for this opportunity to come home and share with you my career path and my personal journey. So thank you, Michelle, with that, and thank you for the very kind introduction. Let's see, I wanted to share my slides here. So obviously I would have loved to be there in person. I treasure any opportunity to come back to Rhode Island, where my family is. And I'll show them, so hopefully everyone can see that. Okay. Again, thank you so much. Apologies for that. As Michelle mentioned, I am currently the global lead for academies and university alliances. And of course, wish I could be there in person. So since I'm not there in person, one of the first things I love to do is meet the audience and share, obviously, a little bit about my background. And being that this is probably largely a Rhode Island crowd, I will emphasize my Rhode Island roots. So I wanted to share just a little bit about myself. I immigrated from the Dominican Republic when I was 8, and I am the youngest of 6 girls. And here's my family. I'm actually in my mom's arms at that point. I attended classical high school. And from classical, I went on to URI, where I have been recognized in the Engineering Hall of Fame, and I'm very proud to currently serve as a board of trustee there. Those are my parents. My mom never smiles, but she was very happy. From Rhode Island, I came across the country to Caltech, where I received my Ph.D. And again, this is sort of in my bio, but really one of the most significant parts of my life, as Michelle mentioned, are my daughters. Here, my oldest daughter graduated and is currently a sophomore majoring in electrical engineering. Again, just to go back to my roots, this was a time that, a period of my life through ×2, where I feel was very instrumental and kind of set my life on the path that I've been on since, which is to participate in ×2, which I understand is now a full academy. At the time, it was just one class. So this is my class at Roger Williams Middle School. I'm still in touch with at least half of these folks, if not more, through the magic of Facebook. As I mentioned, I then went to classical, and URI really want to share some of my experiences there. There's me on the quad goofing around with a few classmates. And the one thing about starting engineering at URI was to recognize there were so few women in the field. And at that time, I decided that I would become a professor, which I'm not now. So we'll talk about that later. But I really wanted to encourage more women and people of color to go into STEM. And so as a result, I also started the chapter, the NSBE chapter, which is the National Society of Black Engineers, which is really, again, instrumental in me finding a community and finding other people that were in engineering that, you know, may not necessarily be at URI, but across the country. So quickly, my career path and logo, no worries, you're not gonna get tested on this, but my first job at a Caltech was at Northrop Grumman, and I'm gonna actually go through each of my career progressions with you, so I won't spend a lot of time here. Honestly, I want most of the time to be spent in discussion with Michelle and also fielding your questions. Again, this is all part of my bio, where currently I am at SAP. So I'll just go ahead and dive right in. Coming out of Caltech, my first job, obviously I said I wanted to be a professor. So during my time as a graduate student at Caltech, I found the work to be very lonely. And as you will see, I'm extremely extroverted and really like working with people. And so decided I would go into industry. And my first job was Northrop Grumman, which I got through a friend at Caltech that had joined the company, and she's like, oh, this is a great company, they have roles. And so I ended up there and ended up supporting an Air Force program on security and actually received a patent through the work that I did there. I was a principal investigator for Northrop Grumman on noise reduction in the automotive environment. And what you might be wondering why Northrop Grumman is working on cars. At the time, it was actually TRW, and TRW had an automotive division. I feel very fortunate because early on in my career, I sort of came upon this very sweet spot of technology transfer. For those of you who may not know what technology transfer is, it's the process of taking scientific discoveries from the lab to the marketplace. The government funds research at a really at a significant cost to the U.S. taxpayer. And so to make sure that the taxpayers get benefit back, we want to make sure that those scientific discoveries come out to market and starting new companies. And one of those technologies I love to brag about is the camera on your cell phone. That was technology that was developed by JPL and NASA. They needed a very low light, inexpensive sensor to look out into space. And now that sensor is a camera on your cell phone. Another great technology, tech transfer technology that I love to brag about is GPS, the Global Positioning System. It was initially developed to guide nuclear missiles, and now it will guide you to your closest Chipotle or whatever your fast food, at least for me on a road trip. Very useful to find the nearest meal. Let's see. And then, as Michelle mentioned, in my background, I had the awesome opportunity to serve in this very historic administration, in the Obama administration, as a technology transfer coordinator for the Department of Energy. And there's my boss, Secretary Chu, one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. I have visited every dot on this map at least once, if not 2 or 3 times. And my work there was to facilitate the transfer of inventions and technologies being developed at each of these national labs and get them out to market. And they're really focused on helping startups. So let's see. And then I actually missing a slide. I don't want too many Caltech slides, but you may have noticed I went to school at Caltech, but I also worked there on several occasions. And most recently, I was director for technology transfer, which I was, for corporate partnerships. So I work with companies to fund research. And then was at Google AI. Most of you will recognize these Google products. Google needs no introduction. Yes, it was a lot of fun. I always get asked, is it just like that movie, Intern? And it was probably better. So yes, it was a great experience, but then I got lucky and got a job offer, an amazing opportunity to join SAP, leading academies and university alliances. And there I really work to amplify SAP's brand at universities. I don't do recruiting, but what I work on is making sure students know and are enthusiastic about learning SAP software and know what we do. So we inspire, we have programs for younger students to build up their digital skills through coding. And then we educate, we have a lot of curriculum. Currently, we have a big move from on-prem to the cloud. And so retraining faculty to teach our curriculum is a big focus this year. And then I do also continue to oversee a small research effort. In this case, it's the government-funded projects. They're in Germany, SAP's headquarters in Germany. So mostly a lot of the government work is with the German government and other European agencies. But I am working on how do we capture all the research that is being funded through SAP. Of course, again, I just walked you quickly through my career path and it all seemed really rosy. And I always get asked people like, how did you manage, did you plan your career? And I really didn't. And that's one of the things I will talk about later is that, what you want to do is just be as prepared as you can. I also want to give a shout out to the previous speaker. I'm not sure it was the previous, but Kelly Lockwood-Primus, who spoke in January. She did an amazing presentation on career advice you never got. And so I want to put in a plug for her and make sure that you see her presentation. But in my case, I did want to mention the barriers that I faced, including my high school counselor saying that I should maybe consider a different career path when I expressed interest in engineering. I almost missed a really important recommendation from URI from one of my professors there, Professor Shukla, who I didn't know. I had many friends at Caltech, and as you can imagine, when you get a recommendation from someone you know versus someone you don't know, it's a lot more meaningful when you know the person. I had my first job offer withdrawn, and this is an interesting background for this group. I basically inquired why my job offer was significantly less than my male classmates. So basically 3 of us got job offers at the company called Ally Signal And you probably have never heard of it because it's not around anymore, and I'm not surprised because of the way they were treating women applicants. But I inquired why my salary was lower, and they basically, gave me really, how do I say, light excuse for it. It really wasn't a reason. And so then that job offer was actually withdrawn as soon as they legally could do it. And then I declined to join a startup. So, again, missed opportunity. I feel that startup went public. And then I almost missed joining the Department of Energy because at the time my kids were pretty young. And the person who was looking for someone just assumed that I would not be interested. This is someone who was like a father figure to me. So he definitely wasn't trying to hurt my career. In fact, I think he was trying to be helpful. And that's something else that we sometimes have to watch out for. When people are being helpful, they can actually hurt our career progression. And he said, oh, she's not going to want to move across the country with 3 young kids. And luckily, the person he said that to, they said, let her make that decision. And so obviously, the rest is history. So just quickly, as you can see, I have worked in industry, I've worked in academia and government, but at the heart of it, my job has been always the transfer of knowledge. How do we transfer knowledge? And so I feel I've gained a really unique perspective in that I've been able to look at the same challenges from many different perspectives, and I can bridge gaps really quickly. And so with that, I'm pretty sure I went over my time. Would love to engage and take your questions.
Karina, thank you so much. I wish we could have hours to do this because I feel like there's so much to explore here. It's great to get to know you more in that way. Our audience may have questions and has already started to put some questions in the chat. So please do that. So there's a Q&A feature there. We would love to hear more questions, which we'll get to. I have some questions to ask, but I'm sure you do as well. So let me start with one on your career path and just, some advice. And I wrote some things down as well, and I want to keep us on track. Let's start with the first question of, looking back on where you are now and what you've overcome. Can you name a skill or a specific mindset that got you here? And I'm thinking about it, from all of that journey, what is it that propelled you in a way?
Sure. I think I've been very persistent. Perseverance has been, as I mentioned in high school when I hit that wall, and this faculty member mentioned, my counselor said I couldn't do engineering. That just made me want it that much more. I've always come in with the attitude of, I will get this done. I will try it as hard as I can, and if I fail, I will try again. And again, let me get back to failure later, because I don't believe there's anything as failure. I think you either win or you learn. So, there's no shame in trying and working really hard. So I've always come in with an attitude of perseverance. When I went to graduate school, it was the academic rigor that I was faced with at Caltech was very intense. And while there were moments I wanted to quit, I eventually was like, I'm not leaving unless I'm physically removed, which meant like I wasn't going to quit. So I think perseverance has been a skill that has been really important in my career journey to continue to, yeah.
And I think about that because there's an internal fire within you. And then there's also, so you've kind of had to make your way around some roadblocks is what I've heard. But I also think back to your Times Square experience and wonder, without that, would you be here? And I'm sure you'd be somewhere. But I think about your start in the STEM industry, and that is so huge. And, based on your experiences, what recommendations do you have for girls or women pursuing these areas?
Sure, and I agree. I think I know the Times2 program exposed me to engineers. I would have not known what an engineer was before that. My world was very small in middle school because I was going to school with people who were very similar to me. And so visiting these engineers and seeing the different jobs that they held gave, even though I didn't know what I wanted to do, I knew with an engineering degree, I could do many things. For women, you can also often feel very lonely. So what I would recommend for women pursuing STEM fields is to find a community. I mentioned when I was at URI, I started the Untitled Chapter because it was really important for me to meet with students that look like me and maybe have the same challenges. And so that was really useful. For women in STEM, there's a number. I recently participated in Women in Data Science. There's a number of organizations, the Swiss Society of Women Engineers, which I've also participated in throughout my career. But it's really finding your community, because whether you're in the classroom, whether you're at work or you're in the boardroom, you're often the only female, often the only person of color, in my case. And so it can be very lonely. And so I would really encourage any women who are interested in STEM or are in the STEM field to really find the community, because we need that kind of support every so often. And one last plug for women with children, especially girls, it's very important the language that we use. Kids get messages really quickly that math and science is not for you, STEM is not for you. I saw with my own children, I still remember my daughter, who's 13 now, and she was 3 in preschool. She took home a solar system cup, which you'll appreciate with your background, Michelle. She had a cup that had the solar system in the back, and these other 3-year-olds said to her, "Why do you have a boy cup?" And this upset her, of course, and I had to explain to her there's nothing boyish about the solar system. And I even said, this is sort of a tall tale boys tell to keep all the fun stuff to themselves. And I said, my kids grew up with there's no such thing as a boy toy and a girl toy. It's toys, and they should be able to play with Legos and any other mechanical toys that sometimes girls are discouraged from using. So I do want to put in that plug that just be careful the language that you use and the signal that we use for our kids and our girls, and encouraging, discouraging them, unknowingly discouraging them from pursuing a STEM career.
Absolutely. There's so many studies, and I'm sure you've seen them all, about where it starts in television. And so thank you for that. Fascinating. So on my left, I have my questions, and on my right, I have the audience questions. So, and I'm seeing some synergies there. So I'm going to ask the next question about your time with the U.S. Department of Energy during the Obama administration. And so you worked as a technology transfer coordinator. Can you describe that position as it relates to the country's energy policy, and what it was like to work with the top echelons of government during that historic administration? That's a big question. And then if you can, there's a question over here about how did you get into energy?
Sure. So that's a lot. So I'll start with, first of all, I want to say I saw it as a complete honor and privilege to serve this country, which has been so good to me, and the opportunities that has afforded to me. So it was an absolute privilege. One thing I want to say is I didn't even know what technology transfer was going through school. So for those younger folks to know that you don't have to know what you want to do. You just have to be prepared as you can for when these opportunities come along. As I mentioned, what I worked with was the Department of Energy has 17 national labs across the country and 3 production plants, but they don't do any research. I was focused on the 17 energy labs and working with them to see how do we get these energy technologies that were being developed, whether it was solar, whether it was hydrogen fuels. We all know the solar technologies and these solar cells that are in everyone's home. So how do we get these technologies out to the market? And so that was a process. So somebody asked about how did I get into energy? Really, technology transfer is almost technology agnostic. It doesn't matter what the technology is. The barriers to getting an invention from the lab to the marketplace, I don't want to say it's the same. If it's a drug discovery, you have a lot more hurdles through FDA and things like this. But in most cases, you develop something in the lab, the scientists and the professors think, oh my gosh, this is great, I've discovered, the next thing since a sliced bread. But that process of getting that technology to market, and in fact, Michelle, I should have mentioned, I think you mentioned, I became a patent agent because of that. So part of that is filing, you have an invention, you then have to protect it. And in the US, we have, I don't want to get too technical, but you asked about DC, but the Bayh-Dole administration is a very special law that went into place I believe in the 70s, which enabled nonprofits and universities to take technologies developed in their lab to own it, have ownership. And so in any case, there's a licensing process. I'm getting way too convoluted. Let me take this back. So how do we take a technology from the lab to the marketplace? It needs to be protected. You have to file for patent. And then you want to license that patent either to an established company or to a small startup that then can take it and commercialize it. Software is another example of that. But that was my main focus there. And because I had the experience of having worked at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which is part of NASA, Secretary Chu thought I would be a good candidate to work in this area. So sorry, I know I kind of went a little bit around circles, but.
No, that was incredible. And just listening to you. And so when I think about the incredible brain that is there, and then the incredible fight that you also must have, that's an incredible, I think I've used the word incredible 5 times, but that's a combination of things that I think not all humans have. And, how did you find that? How did you develop your negotiation skills to get there? Maybe what was the first thing you realized, wow, I just did that?
That's a good question. I don't know that, it's about having an open mind and being open to opportunities, I think, at the heart of it. And so also having immigrated from the Dominican Republic and coming here, I think I've always had this mindset of leveraging every opportunity that was afforded to me. So, when I saw this Times 2 program, I jumped, well, actually I was nominated for it, but, I embraced that. When I had an opportunity to attend classical, I embraced that because I knew that it would prepare me for a better future. Like my parents brought us here for us to have better opportunities. And so I think I've definitely had that mindset of taking every opportunity afforded to me. So when this opportunity to join the Department of Energy was presented to me, I thought it was, I jumped at it. So I don't know, I think it's just being open to opportunities that may come your way, and really choosing a mindset of growth. I think that's how I've managed, I guess.
Well, right. So as women, we get opportunities and we get them put in front of us. But like you said, you had this salary that you were presented, which was an opportunity, but not as much of an opportunity as your male peers. So, that's something that I think we, a lot of people in a lot of forums that I'm on, women want more information on how to gain those negotiation skills. So what would you share about that could help people benefit from what you fought for and got, or got an alternative to it?
Yes, and thank you for reminding me of that, because that was part of the question. So thanks for keeping me on track. Okay, so early on, that was, it was funny because I was very early on, but obviously I knew it was something wrong. We're being offered the same job and I'm getting offered, it was like at the time 10K less than my male counterparts, which was a significant amount. And I knew like that wasn't right. But since then, I have gotten advice. And one of the best advice that I love to give on negotiation is we don't get what we deserve. We get what we negotiate. And as women, it is uncomfortable. Negotiations are uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable for both sides. And people recognize that. And what I want to advise the audience is to feel comfortable being uncomfortable. Okay, know that it's uncomfortable and say to yourself, yes, this is uncomfortable, but I have to do this. And honestly, we grow the most when we are uncomfortable. Like nobody, I think I heard another quote of, you never grow in your comfort zone. You really have to get out of your comfort zone. One thing I always advise women and men, never take the first offer. Always go back and negotiate, whether, it doesn't always have to be more about the money, but more time or salary or whatever it is. Your employer is going to appreciate that. Everyone appreciates you having good negotiation skills. And if they don't, it's likely not a place you want to be. I've never, again, I like Signal went out of business, but when I advise somebody this, what about if they say no, I'm being greedy, or they take it away? I said that's probably not a place you want to go. If somebody wants to hire you and they want to bring you in, they want to work with you, and they will say, this is all we can do right now, and that's fine. And you started just where you were. No one's going to say, you know what, for asking, we're going to take 10% off the top. That's not going to happen. What someone's going to say is, we can't do that for you right now, but let's wait 6 months. Let's wait a year. And always going with the attitude of not now, when, you have a backup plan. Like, okay, when are we going to work for this? And then to ask why you're in the job. Women never ask for promotions. We don't ask for salary raises. And there's people that are doing that all the time. So obviously there's a balance. I'm not saying go in there and just, this money grab, but just understand that you get what you negotiate, not what you deserve.
So true. And I'm thinking about, your career trajectory, and it seems like, and I want to get us to talk a little bit about your experience at URI. Before we go there, it seems like, you go after what you want for yourself, for your family. And you worked for some amazing brands, some amazing companies. Tell me a little bit about, how you made some of your career decisions and your best career decision, and how you went about that.
Sure. First, I want to say I'm grateful that I haven't really had to look for a job. And somebody recently said, because I have switched jobs probably every 3 years or so in the last, say, 10 years. Part of it was not on my own. The government opportunity, that was a 3-year appointment, which I could have extended, but just the timing, I felt like I had done as much as I could do with the resources I've been giving. So one thing I want to say is every job that I've ever held has been the best job I've ever had up to that point. And I'm really fortunate for that. And I can say that now. So I will say that. But some of these career decisions, like I said, honestly, with the government piece, I felt like obviously having grown up on the East Coast, I thought that would be an opportunity to stay back East. And obviously didn't happen. I was pulled back to California. I have been very happy at every job I have done. I always work as hard as I can to do the best job that I can. And I think people notice that. So, when I was at Caltech, I was working with companies to bring in funding for Caltech. I was working with Google. While I wasn't able to get as much money as I wanted from Google to support our faculty, the people at Google that I was working with noticed, that I was doing a really good job, because then when an opportunity opened up there, I was actually recruited for that position. That's also a very interesting career choice, because at the same time that this only happened once to me, where I had 2 job offers at the same time. Unfortunately, most of us are not this, well, unless when you're coming out of school. Outside of that, it's hard to kind of line up 2 offers at the same time. And I was fortunate to have that. This is when I was at Caltech. I had an opportunity to go to another academic institution or to go into industry. And that was a really hard choice for me. And by the way, when I tell people this story and they realize the company was Google, they're like, how was that even a choice? But it was, because I had young kids. The job in academia was here locally in LA. The job at Google was up in the Bay Area. It was industry. And somebody said, you can always go back to academia. Basically, the choices were to go on and do the same thing that I was doing, more of the same, or do something totally different outside of my comfort zone. Somebody mentioned, how'd you get into energy? Well, now I get into AI, artificial intelligence, which I didn't have any background in as well. And I chose the path of growth. I chose to go to Google in a different city, a different environment. And it was, I have no regrets about that. It was an amazing opportunity to learn about AI. So I did a lot of reading, so what you'll see throughout my career is, which is kind of ironic, because you get a Ph.D. to be a subject matter expert. And what I've done is sort of become a jack of all trades. So I know a little bit about many different topics. And again, I can apply those skills at every job that I've had. At the heart of every job I've had is really about relationship building. So those are some interesting career choices. But like I said, basically the bottom line is choose the path of greatest growth, which is the most uncomfortable is the riskiest, probably, some people, but know your worth and know that you learn, and we always bring value to every situation, whether it's our unique background, the knowledge that you've acquired through your education or previous jobs, you can learn.
So I feel like I'm listening as a participant and being the host, because it's incredibly inspiring and validating. So thank you for that. I feel like it's just my little talk here. So let's take a few minutes and talk about, you know, your experience at URI. And, you know, did you have an experience there? And I know, so we talked about Times Square, we talked about, you know, your choice to go to URI, but was there an experience at URI that had you thinking, all right, this is what I want to do? Was there anything life altering in your time at URI?
Absolutely. So I think it's ironic that University of Rhode Island, obviously, North Kingston is only 30 minutes away from Providence, but it was a world apart. It was an amazing experience, which really opened up my eyes to the bigger world out there in many ways. I'd like to say, number one was I realized I could have breakfast at dinner in the dining hall. I still recall, like, I think it was a Thursday. I hear now it's like there's one dining hall every night is breakfast. So first I realized I could have breakfast for dinner. So that was fun. No, but seriously, just the people that I met there, was absolutely life-altering. Being able to participate in a research program with Dr. Frank White, who wrote a seminal book on fluid dynamics, which is used, you know, around the country, the world. So I had an opportunity to do research with him, which I really enjoyed, not really knowing what the answer was, and just going out there, and I was on a boat, you know, collecting data and analyzing that data. I definitely would think that was life altering. And then on the negative side was, you know, getting into that first engineering class and looking around and seeing no other women and no other people of color. I did have one classmate, Dolores Farley, hopefully she's listening, who's doing great, she's back east. But there were very few of us. And so that really also was kind of, you know, shattering, because up to this point, most of my classes, my math courses have been, you know, both women and men. And so I think that was a big eye-opening moment for me, I would say.
So for me, as a native Rhode Islander and as a URI alumna, you know, I'm impressed that you have gone on to such amazing things, and you didn't forget about us in Rhode Island and at URI. You know, how do you explain your connection to URI to people out on the West Coast, or and why do you give back, you know, so much to women at URI or URI in general?
Sure. I mean, I live by the motto of to whom much has been given, much is expected. And I absolutely, you know, give credit to URI, my URI education, for everything that I've been able to accomplish. You know, I came from very humble means. My parents both worked at Hasbro until they shut down. And so I had an opportunity to go to a state school with a great reputation that, you know, launched my career, my life across the country. So yeah, URI, like I said, it was an instrumental time. First of all, by the way, most of my family is still in Rhode Island. So of course I have those connections. Many of my best friends are in Rhode Island. Hopefully some have joined the call. So yeah, of course, have my, you know, a big part of my heart and my soul is there. I should also mention I have two girls now back east, or we'll be back east starting in September. So lots of connections. So that's partly why I give of my time and my finances to things that are important to me. So one is supporting underrepresented students in STEM. By the way, I should mention that when I was at URI, I did start a program. It was a Saturday program. And this is the other thing, that it's never too early to give back. You know, we think, oh, I have to be here, I have to be there, whether it's your time serving as a mentor, we're all able to do that. So as a sophomore URI, I co-founded a program called Sci-Fi, Science is Fun, Inc., where we would go on Saturday mornings and run science experiments with local students to get them interested in math and science. So I've always done that. Like I said, I want to make sure that URI is there for others in similar situations. So I love the mission of URI, that is really there to serve the state. And so, yeah, currently serving as a board member and giving back is really important to me, because like I said, I give URI all the credit for my success, really. So
I do too. Thank you for this. This is, again, it's been a pleasure for me individually to interact with you. We have so many audience questions that I want to take this time first to thank you for the opportunity for me to interview you. But now I'd like to turn it over to our audience questions and to Sarah. Sarah, if you could take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much. Great to meet you.
Thank you. That was so awesome, Karina. Your background, your accomplishments, what you have to share is, I mean, just words for everybody. Like Michelle said, you know, she said she wasn't just a host, but she felt like a participant and audience member. And I very much feel that same way. So thank you for that. We do, as Michelle indicated, have a number of questions, and also because there's a number of just like comments sort of just in support of you as well. And, you know, such as like, good for asking why your salary was lower. Just some praise your way. And someone, Jennifer Stitch, just, you know, really your words, no failure, you either win or you learn. You know, that really resonated with her. So some great feedback from the audience. So to get in some of these questions, I'd like to, let's see, there's so many good ones. So, and I do apologize, we may not be able to get to all of them, but so from Sierra Obi, she says she'll be transitioning into her first job after college. As a woman of color, she says, I am aware that I have to work 3 times as hard as some of my peers to be successful. I want to continue to strengthen my skill set, but I'm worried about having to convince people that I am capable of the work. How can you be an advocate for yourself when trying to progress your career in the industry?
Sure. So first, I want to say thanks for the question. And it is always a delicate balance. Something that I've learned, and I will share with her as a woman of color, is that that you can't bring your A game unless you bring your whole self. So first, I want to encourage you to make sure that you don't try to be somebody else, that you can be yourself wherever you go, number one. And that, you know, pick your battles. This is something I've done early on in my career. Like, there's so many injustices, unfortunately, in the world. And we're seeing that playing out, obviously, right now with the George Floyd case. There's so many injustices, but you will just be exhausted. You have to choose your battle. So understand the things that are going to affect you, and you should absolutely go after and make sure those changes happen. So I would say think about you know, situations that are going to affect you or in your well-being, and those are the things that you want to address. You know, if you have a one-time interaction with someone who you feel maybe doesn't fully respect you or doesn't understand your worth, you may not want to take on that person. But, you know, if this is somebody you're going to work with on a regular basis. And so make sure that you're doing the work, right? And again, and Sarah, as you know, Kelly Lockwood was great on this, Kelly Lockwood Primus, on understanding the company and understanding the value that you bring. What are your deliverables? So being very clear when you're given an assignment as to what it is that you are to deliver. Okay. And so that later on you can show what you've done. Okay. And I did, you know, again, I didn't talk about all the barriers. I eventually did leave one job because I felt I was working for someone who was very much of a male chauvinist, and I was kind of done. And so that's the other thing. Like I said, choose your battles. I've chosen mostly to go around mountains rather than, you know, through them, but we're all different, and you have to understand your level of comfort and your level, I guess, of risk as well. But really the takeaway is to always be yourself, be in a place where you can bring your full self, and then make sure that you're clear on what the deliverables are in terms, you know, I talk about social capital and professional capital. And then on the professional side, really understand what the objectives of the company of the company is and how you can best deliver results. How is the work that you're doing affecting the bottom line, and be very clear about that. And so I will try to be shorter with my answers so we get to many more questions.
That's okay. There's so much to share, and you're so knowledgeable, so it's okay. This is sort of in a similar vein, maybe like some of the I'm not sure, so I'll go ahead and ask it. How do you fight back against imposter syndrome?
Oh, that's great. First of all, something you should know is that it never gets away. So remember we talked about being uncomfortable. It's about managing these doubts because we're all human. You know, at almost every level, you're going to have this thing. So what I try to do is, like I said, first know that it's not going to go away, unfortunately. So, but you can manage that voice by being prepared, understanding your worth, and understanding that that is that it's not valid. These little voices like you're not prepared, you shouldn't be here. You know, do not give that value. Like understand that wherever you are, you belong there, and understanding and, like I said, recognizing your worth. I think that's number one. Mm-hmm. As women, sometimes we don't. As early grads, we don't. And I want to speak back to the previous question that, oh, I'm an early grad, I don't know anything. You do. The value of just coming in with a fresh perspective is why you're being hired. Like, trust me, if you were hired, if you were offered the job, it's because you have the skills to get there. And if you don't, if you feel unsure in a certain area, that you read up on it and that you get comfortable with it. But again, just know, unfortunately, that it's something like I have, like it doesn't go away, but you want to be able to manage it to the point where it doesn't stress you out. So either it's like, yeah, like I understand this might make me nervous, but I do belong, I belong here. And then, like I said, just be prepared. Whatever it is, you know, if you're going into a meeting, you know, you just got to do the work. Do the work. And once you've done the work, I think that should build up your confidence enough to and quiet those voices. So I would just encourage you all to work on quieting that negativity because and recognizing that everybody has it.
That's great advice. I like what you said about you know, as students graduate and become alumni, it can be intimidating, but you know, knowing that you do know things like that really is just something to emphasize and to have people keep that in the back of their mind as they're applying for jobs and feeling that way. It's hard to avoid that feeling sometimes, but that's a great answer. Let's see. There was a couple of questions, and I'm sorry, that question was from Rachel Browning. So Rachel, thank you for that question. We have a couple of questions regarding work-life balance. I mean, you're very busy. You certainly mentioned your family, and it sounds like there's certainly a closeness within your family. And how do you do it all?
That's a great question. First of all, my parenting philosophy has been your kids will end up in therapy no matter what. So do what makes you happy. I'm kidding. Kind of like that. I've had this philosophy in raising my kids that what is best for you is what's best for them. And I'm not a therapist or a psychologist, but what the therapists and psychologists have said is these things that cause, you know, whoever the primary caregiver is, the least amount of stress. Your kids pick up on your stress. Okay, so if you think you're doing them a favor by hiding it, you're not. So they pick up on your stress. So that's one thing. Also, I like this. I saw a speaker recently that talked about how they don't like this word work-life balance because it assumes that they're always in balance, and sometimes they're not. Okay, and I have to be honest. At the time where I was at Google, my work-life balance was not so balanced, and that I saw it as actually. And by the way, I want to say it was my kids. So when I accepted the Google position, I had to be up in the Bay Area. And my kids did not want to move because we had just come back from DC like 3 years before. My oldest was a junior in high school. And she said, we absolutely don't want to move, but we want you to take this job. This sounds like a great opportunity. Do it. And so we managed, and that I was traveling 3 days a week. I had to be in the Bay Area. So I say all this to say that it's hardly ever a balance, and you have to prioritize. And something I didn't share, which I'll share back, as I was graduating from URI, I had one of my classmates again, my male classmate. At some point, I remember saying to him, like, I don't even know if I should go to grad school. I really just want to be a good mom. And he said, you'll be a great mom with a PhD. And I have to say that he was so right, only because of the flexibility that it has allowed me. Like, that's one of the things I'm so grateful for in my career path, that I've, and part of the reason why I probably didn't continue on to academia, and I got into the field of tech transfer, because it's very much a 9 to 5 job, let's say, because if you don't file a patent, nobody dies, not to be so dramatic, but it's just about, what works for you, and we're all different. And so just want to say that, and you always feel guilty as a mother, like, I am, human. And again, just like the imposter syndrome, it's really hard when you have these moms that can be there all the time because they're a stay-at-home mom. But yeah, so it's a difficult balance, and we all do the best that we can. But just know that, what I would just say, whatever causes you the least amount of stress is what's going to be best for your parenting journey. That's my philosophy.
Thanks, Karina. There's a lot you're right. The work-life balance thing, it sort of seems to be a little bit of a term of the past, but yeah. Let's see, we still have some other questions. We have a little bit of time left. We have about 5 minutes left. And that question was from Carrie Rochelle. So thank you for that question. I don't have the name of the individual who asked this, but one of the introductory slides indicated that you were encouraged to go into something else in high school. Can you just expand on that a bit?
Sure. So, having come from middle school where I was in this ×2 program, my confidence had kind of gotten built up that I was good at math. And of course, I could do anything I wanted to do. And so imagine my disappointment when I hit this barrier. Now, this was an older white man. I'm not going to say it was because of my color or my gender. I honestly wasn't doing that great in advanced calculus. But I didn't realize, that not everybody in high school was taking advanced calculus. I was also going to school with kids that had resources that not only could I not afford, but I didn't know were even available. And so I want to talk about it all being relative. So anyway, and also the other piece of that is that sometimes it could have been that he himself was uncomfortable with math and science. And so he saw it as something hard and tried to discourage me. But just to say that, you should never let anyone get in your way. If you want something, you should go for it, because only you know what you're capable of doing. And like I said, for me, and I think that's part of the reason I've been able to be so successful, because it's always relative. Like, I understand, like I said, it's all relative. When I was at Caltech, there were some of my classmates were having a really hard time, because you have everybody who's at top of their class comes to Caltech, right? And then not everybody can be on top of their class. I was always just grateful to be there and be in that group. And I knew, like, just being there was being successful, and not having to get all the A's. So like I said, hopefully I answered that question.
Thank you. There is a nice comment here, I believe from a friend of yours. Is it Eileen Benavides?
Yes, that's my best friend.
Oh, so nice. So she says, "You're such an inspiration to me from our teenage years at Classical, our college days at URI, and through adulthood. I'm proud to call you my friend."
Oh my gosh, she's gonna make me cry. Stop, Eileen.
I want to make sure I shared that one with you.
And Eileen's daughter may be coming to URI. So Eileen, she's got to come to URI in the nursing program. So
very cool. I think we might have time for at least one more question. You've changed, and this is also from Carrie Rochelle. You've changed jobs many times, even across the country. And Carrie writes that she tends to have a loyalty issue where she stays loyal to the employer and doesn't change jobs, even though a change would benefit her professionally. Why did you choose to change jobs and take the positions that you did?
That's a great question. First of all, I want to say I was on a panel recently on getting promoted. And as I put together my presentation, I realized, like, I've only really been promoted at a high level once when I was at JPL. Most of my promotions have been through job movements. And so if you can stay at a job and be happy, obviously don't want to discourage that. And there's many companies where you can do that. But in my case, I have found that my advancement has been in switching jobs. And I've seen people even switch jobs and go back because often companies make it harder for you to move up within their structure. Like, you have to meet this and you have to have done this, whereas somebody else will get hired at that level where you are really having a hard time. So I would say, there's nothing wrong with staying at a company for a really long time. That's becoming obviously less so, especially with millennials who switch jobs very frequently. But so it's really a personal thing, and it's nice to stay in one place. I actually felt the opportunity to go to DC and be in a different city was amazing for me. The opportunity I had to go to the Bay Area for a little bit. And now this is part of the reason I'm so excited about joining SAP. I have a global role. So this is how I'm growing, right? So now with SAP, I have very much of a global role. I have teams all around the world. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to meet them and see them because I joined SAP a year ago. And this is the other thing, like, who joins a company in the middle of a pandemic? Who quits their job?
You did.
People did come to me, were like, what are you doing,
Oh, Michelle's raising her hand too.
Michelle can join me, so that's awesome. So yeah, joining SAP, but yeah, so I'm going to get the opportunity to travel.
Yeah.
Which I enjoy doing. So like I said, what works for you. And, there are companies where you can grow. I'm actually hoping to be at SAP for, 10, 20 years because I can grow there. I think there's so many opportunities. So, yeah, it just depends. As long as you're happy, and we're almost out of time.
That sounds, that's a great response. And I do think that is going to be our last question today. We're going to wrap up. Thanks so much. I'm sorry, there were a few questions we didn't get to, so I do apologize to those who asked them. But thank you again to Karina and Michelle. Just wonderful conversation. Karina, you just have so much to share and just a wealth of knowledge. Really very inspirational. So thank you so much. Let's see, yes, of course. So those that joined today, thank you for taking the time during your busy day to do so. Please keep an eye out for future programs in this series. And as mentioned, we have recorded this program, so we'll send it out in the coming days. We also will send out a brief survey to our attendees just so that we can get feedback on this series and this program. And I'll also be providing a link to give to our Women Transforming Women Endowed Scholarship. Please complete the survey, share your thoughts on today's program so we can bring you more in this series. So thanks so much to everyone and have a really wonderful day.
Thanks. Thank you.